Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my mid-year freakout tag. Now, I know I'm later than everybody else doing this. I think the same thing happened last year. Everyone else recorded theirs in May and released it at end of May, early June, and I'm just behind. It's mid-July, and I'm just now getting to it. I'm sorry, I'm behind, but I got some great books to talk about, and some not-so-great books to talk about. I'm kind of following the rules with this tag, but I'm also changing the rules up. So yeah, that's all I'll say for that. We'll see when this continues. So I have several categories, and I have several books in the different categories. So why don't we start off with the mid-year freakout tag? My first category is the best book I've read this year. Well, I originally had two, but in the last couple of weeks, I had a third that joined the list. So I have three books I want to talk about. In third place for best book I read this year was Wraithkin by Jason Cordova. Blew me away. Absolutely love this book. Military science fiction. Just really simple yet powerful story. I loved so much of this book, and it's got me like, I was planning to give the series a try. I will be continuing on and finishing out the series this year. At least 4 books are out. There plans to be 2 more according to the author, but I will be finishing out because it is amazing. So that is Wraithkin. But my top 2 books, which I can't really tell which one is the actual number 1 because they're so good and they're so different and in different genres. But they're for familiar authors for me. So I have a fantasy book and a science fiction book. The best book of the year, fantasy-wise, is Once a Hero by Michael A. Stackpole. This is a standalone fantasy. It works perfectly by itself. It is an excellent look at kind of like a Conan-esque character, but also with, I would say, like 90s era world building, and it's got a very minimal magic system, excellent action scenes, really excellent themes. What makes my top 2 books stand out is the themes. The themes are so good in this book. It explores the concept of forbidden love, possibly better than like any book I've read ever. It is such an interesting concept. So I thought that this was just a superb best book of the year. And I would also say for science fiction, the best book I read this year was The Green and the Gray, which is just an incredible book by Tim Zahn. It is a science fiction novel. It's basically West Side Story in New York, but with aliens instead of people, and it's not a romance. And you're just like, well, isn't that the whole point of West Side Story? Is the romance? If you read the book, you'll get what I'm saying. But this is a post 9/11 exploration of New York. It is an excellent exploration of themes about rivalries and people hating each other and about coming together. And it's got a great puzzle box that Timothy Zahn is the best at doing puzzle boxes, possibly my favorite puzzle box of his. And this book was so superb. So I still need more time to determine which one is the actual book of the year, but these are the 2 books of the year. These are just incredible. These will be on the end of the year list for best book I read this year. All right, moving on to the second category is the best sequel that I read this year, and I have a definitive answer for what was the best sequel, but then I have like 2 honorable mentions because I really want to mention them. The best sequel I read this year was The Sorrow of the Sea by Stephen Arion. This is the third book, Arion, I think is how you pronounce it. It's the third book and final book in the Judas Blossom, the Nightingale and the Falcon trilogy from Angry Robot Books. He had to stick the landing, and boy did he stick the landing with this book. And I loved it so much. And I think that Stephen he gets how to write historical fantasy. And I'm at the point where I'm pretty much ready to read whatever he publishes once I can find more of his books at bookstores. I did find 2 more of his books at a used bookstore, so I'll be reading those soon. But Stephen just knocked it out of the park with this book. Great. If you like if you want to learn about the Mongols, this book takes Mongolian history and it makes it just come alive on the page. He changes stuff, but he gets the gist of it, and he does a good job with it. But my honorable mentions include The Poison Crown, which was just an incredible book by Maurice Druon. It's the third book in the Accursed Kings saga. This is the best book in the Accursed Kings saga, and it leveled it up for a top-tier historical fiction for me. This series, they're really short books. They're like 300 pages. Some of them are like 400, but 300 to 400 pages. Some like 280, and they're quick reads. But it's like reading some of the best historical fiction. It's dealing with really controversial stuff, but it's appropriate, and I love that about it. One of my other honorable mentions for that is The Evening and the Morning by Ken Follett. This is technically a prequel to Pillars of the Earth, not a sequel, so that's why I didn't really consider it as the actual winner. But this is a great prequel to Pillars of the Earth. All 4 of the Kingsbridge books that I've read have been amazing. Pillars of the Earth was top tier. World Without End, almost as good. And while I loved A Column of Fire, I admit it is a step down in quality, but still a top tier book. When you have amazing books that are like top tier, that's incredible. And this book is a prequel, but it's better than A Column of Fire and on par with World Without End. It is an incredibly powerful book. It's don't let the page count fool you. It's actually quite a lot shorter than the other books, but it's an excellent read, and I loved this. And I am not holding the book because I messed up in my calculations and forgot to mention it, but an honorable mention for best sequel of the year has to go to Trials of the Jedi by Charles Soule. I read that about a month ago. It was amazing, a fantastic conclusion to the Star Wars High Republic series. So I just wanted to include that because that was just a great, great, great book. So what about new releases that I have to be read? Well, in terms of I have the books, I have an ebook copy of The Blackfire Blade by James Logan. That is the second book in the Silverblood Promise Last Legacy trilogy. I read the Silverblood Promise last year. It was probably my favorite book published last year, and I'm super excited for this. I have to read the ebook soon. I don't have a physical copy of it yet, but it has tremendous cover art by Jeff Brown. The first book was just so incredible that I'm so excited to read this. I'll be reading it in the next month sometime, and it doesn't look like there's a review embargo, so I'll be putting out my review after that. So I'm excited to read that book. What about anticipated to be released? So the new release, that the previous category was like new release that I have that ebook. But what about anticipated to be released? Well, I have a couple on here. One is Batman Revolution by John Jackson Miller. John Jackson Miller, one of my favorite authors, writing in one of my favorite series, the Batman series. His Batman Resurrection was incredible. And he said that this new book is his longest book, which he says that a lot, but it's actually true every time. He keeps getting longer and longer books, and this one's like 500 pages. I'm so here for it. John Jackson Miller is an insta-buy author, so I'm so excited for that. Very different type of book that I'm excited to read is Larry Correia's Academy of Outcasts. This is coming out from Athen Books, which is an indie publisher that's really growing well. Athen puts out a lot of like lit RPG and progression fantasy, and this is, I think, one of the two. I don't know. I still don't understand the difference. I'm trying to figure it out. But this is a new series from Larry Correia. There's several series, like I've read through about halfway through the Monster Hunter series. Really enjoyed that. I'm excited to get into the his fantasy series, Son of the Black Sword, but I've never been there for the start of a Larry Correia series, so I'm really excited to read that this year, and I plan to read it right when it comes out. What about biggest disappointments so far this year? That's there's two books that I gave 1 star to. 1 star, I should say, not 1 stars. 1 star to 2 books this year. I just gave a flat out 1 star, and I don't give that often. I've read 85 books this year so far. I've only gave 2, so that means I've been reading a lot of good stuff. I've read a lot of mediocre that are 3 stars, and quite a few bad books that are 2 stars. So I've not been given everything 4 or 5 stars, but I enjoy most of what I read because I'm good at picking out what I like to read. But there are books that have to be the worst. And unfortunately, these books were the worst. I'll talk about the second worst first. In second place for worst book of the year, biggest disappointment of the year, was Elegy for a Lost Star. I loved this is technically a bigger disappointment than the other book, but the other book's so much worse. You can't give 0 stars to a book. I'm sorry. But anyway, this book, I loved the Rhapsody series. I loved the Rhapsody series. I think that the first and third books in that series are all-time fantasy books for me. Truly, I loved those books. Book 2 was fine. It wasn't great, it was fine. But when you put into the totality, I still appreciate it for what it gets everything ready for books 1 and 3. Book 4 I read earlier this year, and in January, it wasn't great, but it was okay. I'll give more books a shot, because I had books 5 and 6, and I read book 5, Elegy for a Lost Star. It just ended my interest in the series. It was so frustrating, so bad. You want to see me rant about this? Go watch my review, because it was so frustrating, and I have no intention of continuing on right now with the series. Maybe one day it'll happen, not for a while. I have way too many books I'm interested in. Killed my interest in the series. And then you have that book that everybody tells you should read. It's a good book. That book that everyone's saying you should give it a try. Well, I gave this book a try because several of my author friends are either friends with this author or fans of this author and really highly recommended it. And so I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. And I gave it a shot. And my opinion, my view of books on the channel is that I need to be positive. I need to try to find something positive to say about a book. I could not do that with this book. I'm really sorry. I did not like anything about this book. Watch my full review for the full rant. It was so... I was angry with how bad this book was. And that is Shigiri and the Brass Head of Obolaphon. This book makes me angry thinking about it. I've not felt that way in so long. A true 1-star book that's just so bad. So bad. This book, worst book of the year. It would be impressive if another book took the slot of worst book of the year. And I hope it doesn't, because I don't want to read more bad books. But this book, I got into a Twitter spat with someone else recently talking about the idea of reviewing a full book. And I said, if you're not going to read the whole book, you shouldn't review it or rate it or talk about it, because you should read the whole thing so that you can understand everything the author was going for with it. Give it a fair chance. When I publish books, I want people to read my whole book, give it a chance. I don't want to just read a little bit, be like, it's not good for me, and then put a 1-star on Goodreads saying, I didn't finish the book. Oh boy, this book made me question that policy. I still read the whole book because I gave it a fair chance, and I was trying. I really tried the whole book. Oh, so bad. So bad. All right. Let's talk about the biggest surprises of the year. Well, to be honest, my top 3 that I talked about earlier, Wraithkin, the Green and the Gray, and Once a Hero, those could have been the biggest surprises. But I already talked about those books. I'd just be repeating myself. So I'm not going to talk about that. Instead, I'm going to talk about 2 other books that were huge surprises. I had no idea these books were going to be as good as they were. I guess I should have known, but one of those books is Babel by R.F. Kuang. I enjoyed the Poppy War trilogy. It's not my favorite, but I enjoyed it. But I read this book, and I admit this is a niche book. There's only a certain type of person who's going to like this book, and I am that person. I loved this book. I was shocked by how much I enjoyed it. It's like a mix of academia and really deep themes, with also some magic system and fantasy and some imperialism ideas. And I admit, if you don't like this book or you're not interested in this book, I get it. This is one of the more controversial and just not appealing to a lot of people. To me, this book ticked the boxes not in the sense of including, this type of character. Not in that sense, tick the boxes. Tick the boxes in the sense of I loved it. I was interested. I liked the beginning, the middle, the end. I was engaged. It was so good. So this book was so good. But the other big surprise of the year was a Star Wars book, and that was Maul Lockdown. I was shocked that I loved this book. This was one of the first Star Wars books I read this year, and it was amazing. Everybody told me that Shadowhunter was this all-timer Darth Maul book, and I loved it. I loved Shadowhunter. I thought it was great. I thought, there's no way Maul Lockdown tops it as a better book, and it does. It's an even better book. I love both books. They're both amazing. And surprisingly, Darth Maul, I like him. I'm interested in watching the new TV show with him, but it's not like he's a favorite. But man, his 2 books, Shadowhunter and Lockdown feels like the antithesis of Kenobi. And I realized that when I was filming my Kenobi review, or my Lockdown review. So watch that for my explanation of why it's the antithesis of the novel Kenobi by John Jackson Miller. But this book was so good, and it stuck with me, and it was a huge surprise. Like I thought Death Troopers was fine, and I enjoyed Red Harvest a lot. But this book was just on another level. This is an all-timer Star Wars book for me. All right, my next category is going to be new favorite author to me in terms of, like, I've never read any of their stuff before. And there was a clear winner this year, and that is Maurice Druon, the author of the Accursed King saga. Totally worth getting into the Accursed King saga if you've never read it before. It's incredible. Maurice Druon, he just gets how to blend historical fiction with also like getting the history right while also making it interesting. That is, and also it's not inappropriate. Like one knock I have against Ken Follett is that he puts in way too much sex and stuff. And while the concept of sex is important in this series, and like the whole basis of it, it's not actually explicit or anything, and so it's appropriate, which I appreciated. So Maurice Druon, he just wrote in a way that I loved, and he didn't write that many books. He wrote 7 in this series, although people say just read the first 6. But he wrote 7 in this series, and then he wrote like 2 or 3 standalones, and that's it. He did not write a lot, but he's an incredible author. All right, the next category is going to be new fictional crush. So I accidentally put it down. I wasn't supposed to. It would be if I were to tell you, like, I don't crush on characters really in books. I just really don't. So every year I change this to be my favorite couple in a book, my favorite couple in the book, and my favorite couple in a book did not transpire until the very end of this book, this year. And it would be a spoiler if I told you who it was. Because you'd be like, wait, what? They got to what? It would spoil the whole point of the book. Because just trust me, I'm not going to tell you who it is. But if you read to the end of the book, the couple at the end of Once a Hero is just incredible. Like if Michael Stackpole, I would read a lot of his fantasy and sci-fi anyway. But if he announced he was doing a sequel to this featuring that couple as the 2 main characters, I'm in opening day. Get me the book day 1, because that was just so incredible. All right, let's talk about books that made me cry and books that made me happy. We'll start with books that made me cry, and I don't like cry much, but books that really moved me emotionally, really just gave me like a heavy heart. And this author, I think, has gotten it just about every year that I've done this, and that would be John Grisham. John Grisham with the Confession just moved me. This is an excellent thriller, but it's heavy-handed. It's very heavy-handed. It's obviously against the death penalty, obviously anti-death penalty, and I can understand that, and even though I actually disagree with John Grisham about most of his politics, I can still enjoy the book he does and even think about the concept of what he's approaching in the book. And The Confession was so good, so moving, and just really made me evaluate stuff. So The Confession was a great book. All right. Books that made me happy. So that was books that made me sad and cry and just really moved me on that emotional. What about books that just put a smile on my face? Books that when I was reading them, I was like, this is delightful. I'm so happy to be reading this. Well, has to go to One Piece. One Piece was a delightful read. Just a delightful, it's a delightful story. I've read the first arc. I keep meaning to continue on. Life happens. Haven't gotten the rest of the arcs yet. So eventually I'll continue on with this series. But what I've read in One Piece is just incredible, and I've loved what I've read so far. So yeah, One Piece is such a smile. Like whenever I read it, it's a breeze. I'll read it in like a day, and it's just fun. All right. I'm also going to do an honorable mention. I loved reading Back to the Moon. The business, the space travel, the characters, the way that Les Johnson and Travis Taylor write stuff, everything just had a smile on my face with this book. So I did want to mention that as well. All right, what about the most beautiful book that I bought this year? Well, I've not recently been buying books because of the covers. I've recently been buying the books because of the authors or the series or the booktube discussions and stuff. So actually, when I was looking through like the books I bought this year, I was like, I don't really think no. And the most beautiful books I received this year were all gifted to me. So I'm not going to count those. So the most beautiful book that I purchased was The Fires of Vengeance by Evan Winter. I have the first book in that series, Rage Dragons. Have this book. I think the third book comes out this year or next year. I'm really interested in it. And this is from the Burning series. And I think this is a gorgeous cover. I think it's a great cover. It's minimalist, but I still like it. And the last category is books that are on my TBR. Well, I'm just mostly going to talk about series and other things like that, big picture stuff. So one is, I told you earlier, the Kin Wars saga by Jason Cordova. I want to read the whole thing of that. It's not too many books. I really want to continue the Salvage Title universe. It's such a fun series, such short books. I really want to continue that as well. Also, I want to read more Ken Follett, John Grisham. They are my break the TBR, mix things up, read a different, not science fiction, fantasy, or horror, or tie-in fiction. They kind of add in a new genre, and you know how Mike from Mike's Book Reviews this year is pretty much just adding a new Ronald Malfi book because he's just loving Ronald Malfi that much. That's how I feel about Ken Follett, reading more of his books, and John Grisham to be honest as well. I also really have a lot of self-pub and indie books that I want to get to, some that I own, some that I want to own, so I plan to do more of that. But the most important one, and the one that will happen because I'm determined, is that I will finish the Star Wars EU by the end of December. I am on track. I'm like one book behind, but I can make it up. I am on track. If I do 3 books a month for the EU, I can finish all the adult novels. I plan to do some of the kids' books next year and slow down a lot with Star Wars to focus on other things. But I am so excited to be done with the expanded universe. Not that I'm not enjoying it, but I'm excited because I am enjoying it, and I'm really excited to talk about it when it's done in its totality. So those are all of the categories in my big ol' mid-year freakout tag. This went way longer than I thought it would, but I had a blast talking about it all. Let me know what would be your answers to these categories in the comments section down below. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.